TV. It was really pretty neat. But that was the first time that I'd ever publicly spoken before anybody about being an atheist, and the first time I'd ever talked before a hostile audience. They didn't like me. They were like, "You're going to hell, you're gonna," all that kind of stuff. And I thought, how weird. I'm the same guy. I changed my opinion, and suddenly I'm an evil person because I had the honesty to change my opinions. So Richard Dawkins also wrote in the foreword to the book, Dan was not just a preacher. He was the kind of preacher you would not want to sit next to on a bus. And he's right. I was that guy. I was so sure. I was so confident. I loved Jesus so much. And it rubbed off on people. There's a lot of people that are impressed with that. If you want to be a missionary or an evangelist, then do stuff like that because it works. Mission work and evangelism work actually works because there's a lot of people wondering. It was your lucky day. You didn't know it, but when God directed you to sit next to me on the bus, you didn't know that you secretly were hungry for the truth and the love that I had within me. You were starving, and once you talked with me and saw me and felt it and understood, then your eyes would open and you would see, yes, he's got something that I'm lacking. He has a richness in his life. He's got a depth that I don't have. He's got something real. That's how I felt. And I didn't feel condescending to you. I just felt like this is your lucky day, right? I would look at you for a minute, and after a little bit of talking, I would say, excuse me for saying this, but it looks to me like you're having some real struggles in your life right now, aren't you? How does he know? And you're having a problem with a personal relationship right now in your own life, and you don't know what's the answer and what to do. How does he know? And you feel like you don't know what to do with your life and what's the meaning of it all, and what's going to happen when you die, and why are you here, and I used to feel the same way, and it's easy to talk to people like that. Maybe not to some of you. By the way, where were you guys? I don't mean you, but where were the skeptics back then? Hardly anybody said a thing to me. If one of you had at least said, you wouldn't even have to argue. If you'd at least said, I respect you, but I disagree. I don't believe that. At least say that, right? At least let people know that there's dissenters in the world. And if they want to engage in a big argument, you don't have to stay, walk away, but at least let them know, I was effective at that, and I thought it was the Spirit of God doing it. It was, the Word of God is powerful, and it convinced people got saved, and I used to preach, and people are in the ministry right now who partly credit my ministry with them of going into the ministry. So I loved it, but I gave it up reluctantly because it's not true. The motivation that drove me into the pulpit as a minister was I wanted to know the truth and speak the truth. And the same motivation drove me out. It's not true. When you look at it factually, by faith anything can be true, right? But when you look at it factually, when you look at the evidences, when you look at the documents, when you look at the scholarship, when you look at the analysis of the arguments, it's just not true. Yeah, there is some truth in the Bible, of course. It'd be a miracle if there weren't, right? But on balance, it's more dangerous than it is good for the world to base a life on it. Thomas Jefferson went to the Bible and he took a pair of scissors. You can get this book, by the way. You can go in the library or the bookstore and get Jefferson Bible. He took a pair of scissors to the New Testament and he cut out all the crap. The stuff that he said, no, that's not Christian. He didn't use the word crap. The word he used, he wrote a letter to Adams and he said, I found some good teachings of Jesus, but it was like digging through a dunghill to find a diamond. And he found some diamonds, and of course there's some good things in there, but that doesn't mean that on balance the whole thing is worthy of our admiration. The good stuff that's in there, any one of us could come up with, and even better stuff than that. For example, slavery is a bad idea. Or for example, women are equal. Or for example, wash your hands. Disease is caused not by demons, it's caused by little germ things that you can't see. Wouldn't that have saved us a lot? How many centuries did it take us for, the stuff that he could have told us? But anyway, in 1987 I went to work for the Freedom from Religion Foundation. It's a national organization of free thinkers, and like you, we use a word that's an umbrella word. that encompasses atheists and agnostics and secular humanists and whatever we call ourselves. We all disbelieve in the same God. So, and are there some members here, Freedom from Religion Foundation members that came? Oh, good. You live in the area? Thanks for coming. We have about 15,000 members around the country. We work for two things: to keep state and church separate, and to educate the public about the views of non-theists, non-religious people. The first purpose we do by legal action. We write letters of complaint, or we take lawsuits. We have right now 8 lawsuits in the court challenging violations of state-church separation. And you probably saw in the news this last month about a big victory of ours on the National Day of Prayer, which came down on April the 15th. And I tell you, that was a big victory for us. That was a lot of fun, too. That we were dancing around the office when the decision came from the Judge Barbara Crabb in federal court. Because you can't just walk up to a federal court and say, "Hey, judge, tell the president to stop doing that." To take a federal lawsuit is a lot of work. And, you know, the briefs and the discovery and the depositions and the cross motions and especially when you sue the government. The government has all these resources. The government can make you jump through all these hoops and make sure they throw it all at you when you're fighting the government. So Judge Barbara Crabb on April 15th ruled that the National Day of Prayer is unconstitutional. The president should not be calling Americans to pray. And the injunction is pending the appeals. So that's why there was a National Day of Prayer this year. Even though it was declared unconstitutional, it was appealed. So the president, in fact, like 2 hours after that decision came down on April 15th, on tax day, about 2 hours after that, the White House sent out a tweet assuring everybody, we're still going to have it this year. And I don't think Obama or anybody at the White House had time to read that 66-page decision to have made up their mind that they're going to go ahead and ignore a federal injunction. We thought it was so disrespectful, not only to those of us who don't pray, who think prayer is a waste of time or even dangerous, and that's not just atheists and agnostics, just a lot of believers who think the government should be pushing prayer. But it was disrespectful to the judge. A federal judge wrote a careful decision based on good law, good history, correcting a lot of the myths, some of the bad history that the religious right is putting out there, such as that they prayed at the formation of our country, the Constitutional Convention. They did not. Such as every president has issued a proclamation of prayer. They have not, and so on. And even George Washington kneeling in prayer at Valley Forge. Have you seen that picture? That never happened. That's a myth. And historically, that never happened. And yet the religious right is bringing out all these things trying to say, it happened from the beginning, therefore we can still do it. Of course, at the beginning, women couldn't vote, right? So are we supposed to go back to the views of the founders? At the beginning, we had slavery. Many of the founders owned slaves. Are we supposed to go back and become carbon copies of their private views? They were smart enough to know that the rest of the country didn't have to be a carbon copy of their personal private views. Even if they all were born-again, evangelical, speaking-in-tongue Christians, even if they all were, they wanted America to be a free country, not run by any particular view. So they did have the National Day of Prayer, and Obama proclaimed it again. To his credit, there's a lot I like about Obama. There are some things that, of course, on state church that I don't like and we don't like. And we can complain as a nonprofit on state church grounds about something a political person's doing. To his credit, he backed off the last 2 proclamations. He did not invite in the religious right. He did not have the big rallies like Bush did. He didn't make this big evangelical Christian deal out of it like some of his predecessors. He did issue the proclamation, but kept it very quiet. And also to his defense, Congress has told him he has to do it. Congress had passed a law, a statute, requiring the president to do this. So he can't ignore a congressional mandate, right? Our lawsuit declared that congressional law, which was passed in 1952, that law is unconstitutional, and that National Day of Prayer is unconstitutional. It was 1952 when Billy Graham, the big evangelical preacher, went to Washington, D.C., and he had this huge 6-week revival crusade. Interesting choice of words. Had this revival meetings at the Armory and on the steps of the National Capitol, and right in D.C. This huge photographs of thousands of people with Billy Graham, calling our nation to Christ. And Billy Graham then called on Congress.